here's the realistic number. Here's my pie in the sky. I'm going to shoot for this number, but bank your money on this number. So I've always been very realistic, and we've lost deals many times because I won't tell him that, hey, you're going to make X when you're not.
Because you're in, and what I hear you saying, and what I want to make sure we point out to those listening, is you're building a long-term relationship. You want the 20 deals over the next 5 years,
Right.
not the 3 deals this year and then burn them and then find someone else.
Exactly.
Because after you get burned a couple of times, he's like, I'm not going to work with you again.
Right.
And some real estate agents are very transactional. They don't care if they burn people and they just move on to the next one.
Yeah.
There's plenty of fish in the sea. If you're looking to add a new pillar to your business, one that is a bit murky, I think most real estate agents have had experience working with these people in one way or another, but trying to really build it a systematic way to create a relationship and really figure out who's worth their salt and who's not. I'm going to be talking today with one of my good friends and real estate agents here at Whissel, Adam House, and how he utilizes flippers and investors to really help grow his business and keep that as one of his key pillars. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, welcome, Adam. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Brian.
My name is Bryan Koci. I'm director of marketing here at Whissel Realty Group in San Diego. And Adam, tell the podcast a little bit about who you are, a little bit about your background, and we'll go from there.
All right. So been licensed for a while.
Like 3-4 weeks?
Yes, like 3 or 4 weeks. Decided to jump in full time in 2014.
Okay.
Got tired of the corporate world. Born and raised here in San Diego, and have been aligned with Kyle and you guys since 2017.
Yeah. And I it's funny, we talked about this a minute off air, but we really connected. And one thing that really drew you to Whissel was the massive use of media. And it's funny to say that because talking about that in 2017, where it was just me, to now where there's a team of almost 10 on the media team and an awesome built out studio. It's funny to be like, of our massive media experience. And now it's tenfold that.
Yeah.
And one thing that I want to talk a lot about for this podcast is whether you're new or experienced, I think you can grow your business, add new deals, add new contacts by really working with investors. And whether that's doing wholesaling, like there's a lot of different ways. But one thing that Adam has done really well is he's found and partnered with an investor to really be able to work some unique deals to help his clients get homes sold, to help him sell more houses. And I really want to just go through how you did that and exactly step by step what someone's watching, how they can do that. And so that way in 4 or 5 years, they can have a relationship as strong that you do. So before we get into that, this is the Whissel Way Podcast, a weekly podcast we do where we give you tips and tricks on how to grow your business, whether it be in real estate, lending, title, or really anything. Obviously, we have a gear towards real estate, but you can take these tips and tricks and utilize it in really any of your business. If you like this content, you want more of it, go to thewhisselway.com, thewhisselway.com. From there, you can join our Facebook group, subscribe to our YouTube channel, join our weekly newsletter, learn about some courses we do that help you get inbound referrals, join our outbound referral network. And if you're interested, you're in San Diego and you're interested in learning about joining the team, that information will be there as well. Without further ado, let's get into it, Adam. Before we talk about step one, tell me a little bit about your relationship with some investors that you have now.
Okay. So I think anybody in real estate knows that the investors, some of them are scumbags.
Yes.
Well, I guess a lot of them are scumbags. They will say whatever they have to say to try and get you to be their agent. Yep. Although you want to believe that when you're first starting out, because you're hoping that you're going to end up getting $100,000 deals off of them. The reality is they're all talking to 100 other people at the same time. So initially, I started building the business just by doing open houses, calling vacant open house, options. Hey, can I hold your house open? And that worked, generated some business.
And you were calling other agents? Is that what you were
Yes, I was calling listing agents of vacant properties. I called a listing agent. I didn't know at the time he was actually the investor behind the deal, but he let me hold the home open. I remember it was in Del Cerro. It was a really nice house, lots of style. Like I can tell he had an eye for interior design. So I really liked the quality that I saw because a lot of these guys put lipstick on a pig.
Again, we need to have an investor in here. That's
Yeah.
because you're right. There's a lot of rough ones, and you don't want to get in bed with the wrong one. And again, like you said, they all tell you, "Oh no, I'll work with you," but they have no loyalty to you. They're just trying to get you to bring them deals,
Right?
And that's not. And I think that puts a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths and saying, "I don't want to work with investors," because that's the stigma and that's what we see. And so I'm really excited to have you tell us this is how you figure out who to work with.
Right. So this guy, he showed up while I was doing the open house. He needed to like pressure wash something. So I just kind of started picking his brain because I was new. He rolled up in a flashy car. I thought, okay, like he's obviously, 10 steps ahead of me. Like, what can I learn from him? So I started to just kind of listen. How did he start? And he started one by one, took the profit from one, bought another, and just kept going. But he never really had the goal of flipping 100 houses a year. Like so many of these guys, they just want to turn and burn and move on to the next project. He wanted to do, if he could do 10 good flips a year versus 100 crappy flips, like he was happy. On the back end, that also helped me understand too, like I don't want to look bad just because I'm representing a bad flip. Automatically, if you're holding an open house and the house looks like crap, people are going to have a bad taste in their mouth about you. Even though you weren't the one doing the work, it's still your reputation on the line.
People have no idea. People don't know what brokerage you're with. They don't know, you're not the listing. They don't know. Right. And they're not supposed to know. It doesn't matter. Right. And so you're 100% right. If you're not prepping your home, the home you're listing, it's going to look like this is your listing. You didn't prep your sellers. It's your fault.
Yeah.
And they're not going to be like, hey, this house looks like junk. Will you show me other houses? I would assume they're going to look the same.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, you're right.
So he and I stayed in touch. I had dealt with other investors, some good, some bad. I learned a lot through that. I did learn, like you said earlier, you're just another number. So, as soon as they can work with somebody else who will give them a lower rate or, cut them back some of the commission or whatever it is, they'll, you're dead to them. So, he and I stayed in touch for a couple of years before we actually started working together. I started sending him some options that I had, off market. And he ended up coming in. And one of the things that I liked was that he did what he said. And so many of these investors, they will come in and they will offer the highest price just to get under contract. And then they will undercut and try and get a price reduction 5 days into escrow of $100,000. And then the deal falls apart.
And like, I get it from a business perspective, but
right.
And for them, it's not emotional.
Right.
But I've seen it happen where they're working with someone that needs to move because their mom's sick and they need to move in, and not 5 days into escrow, it's 3 days after it was supposed to close. They're like, well, I'll only close now if we crush it. And then you're like, well, now they're screwed because they have to move.
Yep.
And they don't have time to go back on the market.
Yeah.
Again, not great.
Yeah. They're banking on the numbers working in their favor.
Yeah.
And it does. I mean, these guys, I was literally talking to one of the guys that owns one of these companies over the weekend. And I was giving him a little bit of shit because I'm like, your guys, come on, they're playing games, and he knows, but for him, if he can even get 10% of them to go through, he has more money than he knows what to do with.
Yeah.
So we started working together. It's been one of those things where he has always performed. He's never backed out. He's never tried to get the 50K under. If there's any adjustments, it's justified. It's like, hey, we didn't know that there was a sinkhole. So like we need, to adjust it for that. Like it's a legitimate reason.
Yeah.
And so I've always appreciated that. He, he's always quick to write the offer. He's not afraid. But the other thing is that he has cash behind it or hard money, but most of the time he's got the cash to back it up. Most of these guys have some sort of a construction loan on the back end or hard money or contingencies, behind the scenes, whereas he doesn't. So, it's made it nice and smooth, but I've had a lot of times where I've been able to bring him in and give an honest analysis of like a proper sales price, and he's been able to match it for my clients. So they've been happy. He's been happy. He gets a good project, and
So Some of the things that I'm hearing when you're looking for an investor to work with, like you have a really good relationship with one. If someone's listening and say, "Hey, I want to build a relationship," some things you want to look for is one, the quality of the work.
Yep.
I remember when I bought my house, Kyle showed me it and he goes, "I know these people.
Yep.
I know they do good work."
I remember.
Like little things like this stove is like a $1,200 stove. It's not a $400.
Right.
Like it's not just cheap stuff. And so little things like that where it doesn't really matter. He's like, I know that they took care here and I know that they took care here and like really paid attention. So you want to look at someone who does good work.
Right.
You also want to look at someone that has cash behind it is what I hear you say.
Yep.
Now, how do you ask that? You find it, you go to a house and you're like, okay, I'm going to hold this open. It's a beautiful flip. I can tell that like the wall switches aren't falling off and stuff. You're like, hey, great open house. Do you have cash? Like, how does that come up?
Well, you mean asking the investor that did the project?
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're around a while, you'll get to know all the typical big box investors.
Mhm.
And you'll also get to know the small, because there's small boutique investors, and that's the one that I've partnered with. And I've met a whole bunch of other boutique investors, and they have their go-to agents, you know, and they pretty much kind of stick in their circle. We stick in our circle, they stick in their circle, and everybody's kind of, you know, they play to their strengths and they kind of stay in their lane, so to speak. Whereas the big box flippers, I mean,
yeah. So, okay. So, and this is true, right? With lenders, with real estate teams, like we have our lenders that we go to. How do you get in good, right? Like scenario here.
Yeah.
You're good with your guy, but I want to come in and steal him from you. What do I do? Obviously, we're not going to fight.
In all honesty, I think that one of the biggest things that I've always tried to be is honest in regards to ARV. So that's after renovation value.
Mm-hmm.
If I give him too high of a number, we don't hit that number, like we're probably going to be done because he just lost 100K because I overpromised.
Yep.
And I see that happen a lot. People we lose out on these deals because people went way higher than we were comfortable going, but they were probably fed some bullshit to go ahead and believe that they were going to sell this house for $1 million when it's really only worth 900. So I've always kind of given him hey, here's the realistic number. Here's my pie in the sky. I'm going to shoot for this number, but bank your money on this number. So I've always been very realistic, and we've lost deals many times because I won't tell him that, hey, you're going to make X when you're not.
Because you're in, and what I hear you saying, and what I want to make sure we point out to those listening is you're building a long-term relationship. You want the 20 deals over the next 5 years,
right?
Not the 3 deals this year and then burn them and then find someone else.
Exactly.
Because after you get burned a couple of times, he's like, I'm not going to work with you again.
Right.
And some real estate agents are very transactional. They don't care if they burn people and they just move on to the next one.
Yeah.
There's plenty of fish in the sea. I don't think most of us like to live that way. And so long-term value. Okay. So good. So what I also hear you saying is you need to have a bit of understanding of ARV, what the investment, if you're going to work with investors, you got to kind of know the process.
How much it's going to cost them, their hold time. You have to factor all of that in.
And what's the best way to learn that? Again, I'm not an agent, but if I were, and I wanted to steal your guy, or someone else's. And again, what I mean by stealing your guy,
right?
We talk about people being shady. I'm not trying to be shady. I'm trying to provide him better service than you do.
Right.
And part of that, the easy way is, hey, I'll do it for cheaper. Right.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a great way to build a long-term relationship because I don't think your guy's looking for the cheapest. He's looking for the best. Right. And so how do we, as agents that don't know about flipping and ARV and cash flow and hard money, where do you go to learn this?
You study. Like I read all the time. I'm always researching articles, figuring out where construction costs are at, labor costs, all of that stuff factors in because at the end of the day, he's paying all of those bills. So if lumber's through the roof, well, guess what? His build cost is going to be more if he's building something. If he doesn't need a lot of lumber, then we're in luck. Maybe he only needs, cosmetic and he's not going to actually be hit by that. But all of that kind of stuff factors in.
Makes a lot of sense. So, okay, where else can we find these investors? We talked about open houses, and you said there's the big box ones, which as we're talking now as an individual agent, probably not trying to take that over. As a team, maybe building that relationship, right? So that way your team can be the listing agents or be exclusive to have those open houses.
Yeah.
But what are other ways we can find investors?
So look at recently flipped properties.
Okay.
Pull up tax records, public records to find out who owned it, who was behind the scenes. don't contact the listing agent because they're probably not going to give you the number to their investor.
It's their guy.
But look and see who owns that corporation. I mean, social media like Facebook, Instagram, see if you can track down who the investor behind it is. Kind of go from there, but like try and find somebody that you actually align with, you know?
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like your guy has a similar kind of look and feel to it, to where you look at 5 houses and you go, okay, yeah, I can see the same guy did this.
So it's very similar to like when you and I first met, and it was only you running the media team, but you had a very specific style for the photography. And I always liked that. I always liked the videos you were putting out and all of that kind of stuff. So before Kyle and I connected, I had already been watching what you had been doing from the, public perspective in presenting the brand.
Mm-hmm.
Same kind of thing. He has a lot of, very stylish, tasteful accents that he does in all the homes. He has certain technology that he puts in all the homes. So they're a step above just the basic, bottom barrel flip.
And from what I've seen, like the person who flipped my house, they paint their front doors Tiffany
same
blue.
color. Yep.
So literally, I drive down my neighborhood. I'm like, oh, they did that. Oh, hey, I didn't know they did it. Like, I can tell immediately.
Yeah.
And when you look inside, they use the same fixtures typically, sometimes the same tile. So you can really start to piece things together as you're looking through this. So say you find the investor, you like them. What do you do then? Do you call them up and say, hey, can I hold a house open? Hey, can I buy you lunch? Right. We're not going to call them and say, hey, can I be your exclusive listing agent? No.
So these guys probably don't care about a free lunch because they have more money than they need. They're probably not looking for coffee, none of that. So they're probably, the best way to go would probably be to ask what projects they have coming up. Ask, can I go shoot a little promotional reel showing the construction process, show the before and after. Ask them if you can hold the open house. Ask if, they have any other projects that they're eyeing, what they typically buy. Try and learn a little bit more about them. And then kind of let the conversation go from there. If they're just not interested, they're not interested. But if they say, oh yeah, you know what? I'm doing this flip over in this neighborhood, and you know a lot about that neighborhood, maybe speak to how you know a lot about that neighborhood. You're probably not going to get the listing yet, but like build the rapport. It takes time.
One of the things that Kyle says about lenders, because we have lenders come in every day. Hey, I want to be, we're like, yeah, we got one or a few, right?
10, yeah.
And what Kyle has always said is, give me a deal.
Yeah.
And let me see what it's like to work with you. Do it on your dime, not my dime. Because if I have to test you out with one of my clients and you shit the bed, like now I wasted my client with a bad experience with you. Bring me a client. Let's work through it. And so what I'm getting at with that is, like you said, I love how you brought it into this exactly, is ask them what they're looking at, what their buy box is. That's a popular phrase.
Price matters.
Yeah,
not all of them touch $1 million and above. So that's kind of tricky too. As soon as you get like a flip that's $1 million or above, 90% of the investors in San Diego are out. Yeah. So that matters.
And so ask them what their buy box is, and then bring them a house, bring them an option, ask them to write an offer on a listing. Their buy box is $400,000 to $600,000 in Santee.
Set up a search. Set yourself up on a drip.
Yep.
Like we set clients up on drips. Like set yourself up on a search.
100%. And you find one. You say, hey, and again, now you treat them as a client.
Yeah.
And obviously they're going to have MLS searches stuff. They're going to see the same thing. So sending them like, hey, did you see this one? Or setting them up on a Ylopo drip is probably a bad idea.
Yeah, I wouldn't set them up on a drip at all. Yeah.
But if you find things off market, maybe you go to a listing appointment and they're just not ready to sell yet. Maybe say, hey, this fits in Billy's buy box. Let me call them up. Hey, I just went on a listing appointment. It's this. They're not ready to list yet. Can I bring it to you? And if I bring it to, is it rude or is it too much to ask to say, hey, if I bring it to you, I want to represent you on the buy side and the list side? That's
not, I mean, that's the norm. You typically, if there's a spread, you typically do that. I've seen, if there's no spread, either a reduced commission or a tiered commission.
What do you mean by a spread? I don't know that.
So in regards to if they buy it for $500 and they want to sell it for $800, there's probably going to be a spread because they've spent maybe $150,000 renovating it. Now they're up to $650. Now, if they sell it for $800, there's a spread for them to include a commission for you. But if it's a really tight one where there's not that, buffer and it was a $200,000 spread and construction costs got out of hand, maybe you can't eke out that 1% or 2% commission or whatever they were going to offer you. But I've also seen it tiered where, if I hit this price, you get this commission. If I hit this price, you get that commission. Like there's always ways to kind of be creative. And that's another way that you can try and earn that, relationship and say, hey, if you make your money, then cool, I'll get X commission. If you don't, I'll take a reduced commission.
Yeah.
Kind of lets them know that you're willing to partner with them and kind of feel the pain if, things go that route.
And here's where it gets tricky. I love the idea of, I did this personally. I know Gary Vee talked about this a lot of like, do the first one, do your first job free is what Gary Vee talks about.
Yeah.
I photographed the Santa photo party, the photos with Santa the first year, 2014, before I got hired. I did that free. And then I went to the holiday party. I did that free.
Yeah.
And so do stuff free so that way they get an experience to work with you. Here's where the rub is though. And I'm not saying you do this free because you have a split with your team. Like there's issues.
Run it by your broker. Yeah, obviously.
But say you go, hey, I'm going to do this reduced for
1%.
1%. What I'm making up a number.
Right.
This is not price fixing.
Yeah,
whatever.
no, we're not fixing. We're just throwing numbers out.
One apple. Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
How do you then say, hey, I'll do it for this one now, but don't give me 1% or one apple every time I do a new listing. I'll do this to prove to you, but this is my commission moving forward.
Right. Yeah.
How do you have that conversation without being an asshole about it before you actually do anything?
I think it's really easy to say, hey, I want this relationship to be super transparent. I don't want like any bad blood. I don't want you to harbor any, thoughts or feelings. And same thing for me. So this is kind of what I want out of this business relationship. And is that okay? So that there's no surprises in 6 months. I didn't know. No. I mean, I've been very clear on what my expectations and desires are about this relationship. Can we make that happen?
And what I love that. And I love that you even mentioned 6 months because right, this isn't something that you're going to have on a weekly basis, but also bringing it back to their buy box. You have this person who's the people that did my house, I think love East County because I see the doors in East County.
They're everywhere. Yeah.
But then again, you want to build a relationship that you can keep, and you don't want to spread yourself out. But if you say, okay, this person has a buy box in East County, this person has a buy box in Rancho Santa Fe, and we'll go up to 5 million. Like you can build these relationships with different vendors when you say, I know these people specialize in Spanish style revival or whatever, and really expand this by working with people with different buy boxes rather than saying, oh, I've got 9 investors that are looking for the same thing. At this point, you're as bad as they are because you're going to give it to all 9 and they're going to use all their 100 agents. It doesn't make sense.
Right.
Any other tips or tricks that you have about either starting a relationship or continuing a relationship with an investor that you work with consistently?
Just be straightforward.
Okay.
Don't do the smoke and mirror game. If you say you're going to do something, do it. And don't overpromise because that's what shoots some of these guys in the foot. There's so much money on the line. And if you end up partnering with somebody that's not a big box retail flipper, you're probably partnering with a guy who has a family. Like, I mean, think about it like from your perspective. If you're investing $100,000, $200,000, $500,000 into these properties, how would you feel if you were just lied to? If you know that like the ARV is asinine, just say that. Like I promise you, like you don't want to overpromise. Yeah,
because it's that long-term relationship, and that's more important than short-term gain. Adam, before we get into our Whissel Widget of the Week, thank you so much. That I learned a lot. I think people listening to this are going to be able to see how they can just add another pillar. What I'm not saying, hey, stop cold calling or prospecting or working your sphere. But maybe this is another level that you can add to your business that can add 2 or 3. How many deals a year do you work with this guy?
So it totally depends, but I can tell you that I've made a ridiculous amount of money when everything else dries up, when the market turns or, things kind of stall and everybody else that was banking on calling expireds and that starts to dry up. On the back end, we've got projects in the works. So it can definitely be one of those things that like really comes in clutch when things kind of slow down for you.
And I absolutely love that because we always want something that we can count on throughout. And when the market gets tough, they get busier. Yeah. And so that's super helpful. And then correct me if I'm wrong, but from my understanding, the flippers really care about the numbers.
Yeah.
It's not, well, this house is kind of shitty or the neighborhood. They care about the numbers. And maybe it doesn't have to be the most beautiful house every time, but if they can create something they're proud of at a good price to make a profit for them, and again, keep it ethical as much as we can, as the people who I'd want to work with, not the people that screw over an old lady who has to move into a retirement community. I think that those are the ways to go about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. If you got value out of this and you're listening to this and going, okay, I want to add another layer to my business and I want to start looking at investors, please let us know in the comments. Please write us a review that this maybe helped give you a different perspective on ways to grow your business, not just by working more or harder, but by building relationships in different circles. Please write us a review. If you come across a conversation and another agent says, hey, this year I really want to focus on investors, send them this video, send them this podcast so they can kind of get off to a good start and not run into some of those mistakes that I think a lot of agents do of getting blinded by the broken promises by some of these shady people. And I want to be also very clear. There are definitely shady investors. There are also definitely shady real estate agents. And this is not unique to them. And I'm not saying we as a whole are better than they are as a whole. Right. And I want to make sure if you're an investor, you don't hear that I'm shitting on you. If you're upset by what I'm saying, it means you're probably not a shitty investor.
Right. Maybe they are. Maybe they are offended.
I mean, if they're offended, if you're offended because I'm speaking the truth, that's on you, not me.
Yeah.
But I think if you're offended because I'm putting down the industry as a whole, I get it, because I get offended when people say real estate agents are shady. When I'm like, talk to any of the people I work with and they're all cool. Like, we don't have anyone working at Whissel right now that I'm like, ooh. We have in the past. They don't work here anymore.
Yeah.
So anyways, all that to say, thanks for watching. Before we get to our Whissel Widget of the week, write us a review. Go to thewhisselway.com if you want to learn more to grow your business. All the information is there. Now, let's transfer over. Whissel Widget of the week, something we use in our business, saves us time, makes us more money, helps us have more fun. What do you got for us?
So it's an app. It's called VN.
The letter V as in Victor, the letter N as in Nancy.
Yes, sir. It is a super easy to use video editor.
Okay.
So when you're shooting a property walkthrough to either post on Instagram or send to a client, and you see all of the media teams that are big budget and they're filming these videos where it speeds up and slows down and then cuts to this and has nice transitions and all of that, that's what this app is. And it's super easy to use. So you can do your walkthroughs for your clients and send them something that looks highly edited in just a few minutes.
I love that. I was going to do another one. I'm going to keep on that same theme. The app that I use to do those things as well is called CapCut. If you've ever been on TikTok, I'm sure you've seen like edited by CapCut. They make it really easy to publish from the app. But CapCut is another tool that you can do those. And I think there's premium versions and paid and free versions. I think I just have the free version. Yeah. But I'm really a big fan of CapCut.
Cool. I'll try it.
Cool. Thank you so much for watching this episode of the Whissel Way Podcast. We will see you next week.